As multiple wars were spewing over the nations of Earth, Palpatine slowly made his way towards the Middle East. He had already conquered much of Egypt, meaning he would now have to get through the bottleneck of the Suez and head up north. French and British troops still had a hard time dealing with the incoming stormtroopers, mostly because they were accompanied by more AT-ATs each time. And down south, things did not go swell either. Many different nations were involved in the conflicts here. The landmass was incredibly large, and Palpatine's winnings were not as drastic as his northern campaign was. By August of 1947, Jerusalem had fallen, a massive blow to the people of Earth and those resorting their hopes to faith. Though others saw this as their calling to fight the evil forces in the name of their God that they worshipped. With Palpatine getting a bit zealous in spearheading towards Europe, he left his rearguard open. Britain and Norway took advantage of this, as they closed and cut off their reinforcing lines. Palpatine's troops were now on their own, but their technological advances were more than enough to sustain themselves over the coming weeks. Saudi Arabia would be next. Once more, the open desert terrain was ideal for the walkers, though the smaller ones with 2 legs would often sink and get stuck in the sand. The ones with 4 or even 6 legs could spread their weight and had an easier time traversing the sandy terrain. Though initially the people seemed hopeful after cutting off Palpatine's troops, it did not take long before the reinforcing routes were opened once again. Only a few heavy walkers were enough to have the opposition scour away. The bulk of Palpatine's units to the north was heading towards Turkey, the doorway into Europe. At the moment, they were mostly facing French resistance from the Free France nation. In Europe, the war did not go in Germany's favor. The Soviets were pushing them west, and the communist Japanese managed to perform a successful naval invasion near former Denmark. The combined Japanese strength made up for many losses that were suffered during the initial conflict with the Imperial Japanese. Saudi Arabia continued to suffer at the hands of Palpatine. The only way to reinforce and resupply the troops of Earth was through Iraq, but that front grew narrower with each day. advantage of the Soviets, their Comintern faction rose to an incredibly powerful one that would clearly become the main enemy of Palpatine. But for now, the current wars with other nations of Earth needed to be cleaned up. As the conflict with Turkey was unleashed, Palpatine sent his forces into Iraq as well to conquer new angles which he could use to invade Turkey with. The fact that the Galactic War campaign in Africa was faltering was a sign that Stalin had time to reorganize once the dust had settled over Europe. By February of 1948, Iraq capitulated, giving Palpatine the desired new angle to attack Turkey. At the same time, he would move east and attack other nations to unlock new pathways into the mighty Soviet Union. But once more, the galactic invaders left openings in their rear guard, and it were the Brits once again who took this opportunity to win back territory. With Turkey now thrown into the conflict, the Soviets realized that Palpatine was a few months away from standing on their doorstep. They still had a war to finish in Central Europe, but took countermeasures as they fortified the mountains and hills bordering with Turkey. They hoped that bouldering artillery would keep the stormtroopers at bay once they had reached this zone. The fact that the front line would decrease into a narrow space would benefit the Soviets' battle plan. By the end of March of 1948, almost half of Turkey had already been seized by Palpatine, but they were not ready to throw in the towel just yet. The Turks were proud and had a history of defying invasions after initial losses were taken. Iran was also losing ground rapidly. They were able to hold off the roads leading up to the Russian border, but it was India that suffered because of this. They had received supplies and armor from Britain previously though. History repeated itself as the armies of Earth tried to cut off the units that were heading in Europe and Asia. Saudi Arabia had almost been taken back in its entirety by the Brits. Then on the 18th of May, 1948, it was announced that the German Reich had capitulated. Joseph Stalin was pleased, as this meant that the Axis faction altogether would soon come to an end. It would make his own faction the strongest and most resilient, as puppeted nations would join as well. The war between the armies of Earth was not over yet, but Germany was their strongest enemy, and with them gone, it would be easy to take over Italy and other allies of the Axis. Hungary was next to fall, and they did so not even 2 weeks after the official defeat of Germany. In Africa, Palpatine was heading down south again. He needed to assign a lot of resources and troops to maintain control wherever he went on the different continents. The Soviets had entered Italy, and to their west, the Free French had established a new government to deal with the leftovers who supported the dream of the former German government. But they had their hands full, as in June, Palpatine launched another invasion on their soil. This time, things went different though. Since the last invasion, technology had significantly changed, and the French artillery was brutal and precise. The invader would bleed heavily for every victory they claimed. At the end of June, Palpatine's campaign had ended in failure, as the nations of Earth were indeed able to cut off his troops, who perished trying to take over Turkey, Iran, and India at the same time. Though they were cut off, they did manage in the end to take back some of Saudi Arabia, and it looked like they were about to launch another assault up north. But the people of Earth were prepared. They had hopeful thoughts of stopping the advancing enemy in their tracks, just like they were doing in France, where a combined force drove the invaders back into the seas, crushing them on the waves. Earth was not ready to give in just yet.